How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to Gym or Range. This is episode 3. I'm Karl Heiser. This is my co-host, Alex Cervantes. Last week, we did our ACC preview. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. We had a lot of fun with it. This week, we're doing the Big Ten. So we're going to do a deep dive in all those teams, tell you what we like, what we don't like. But first, we're gonna start off with some quick storylines, just things that we thought were important to talk about. And so first, I'm gonna throw it over to Alex because he's got some recruiting stuff he wants to talk about, but not really the normal recruiting stuff. This is more of a complaint with some recruiting stuff. So Alex, take it away.
So I wanted to bring this up because Jeff Goodman, great college basketball analyst, does a lot for young reporters in the college basketball media world. He went on a podcast, I believe, with the Field of 68 and he has been a fan of Shaedon Sharpe, who is the number one player in the class of 2022 and committed to Kentucky for, I think, longer than people like guys, the national recruiting bases had him at number one. He's long said that Sharpe was better than Emoni Bates. He's long said that Sharpe, he would rank him higher. And I'm fine with all of that because that's an opinion. Here's what I can't get with. He came out and said that Shaedon Sharpe, he would take Shaedon Sharpe over what he can do at Kentucky than what Zion did at Duke. And that is extremely outlandish because I like Sharpe. He's a bucket. He can score. He'll do great things at Kentucky. But you're essentially asking Sharpe to be a 22-9 scorer. Zion shot 68% from the field. He won an ACC tournament. He was an almost consensus National Player of the Year if R.J. Barrett hadn't won with USA Today. And you're basically – Sharpe's got to do all of that and then probably win the national title. Like, that's the bar. That is such a ridiculous bar that I should feel bad for Sharpe almost with that comparison. But I don't know if you want to add anything in that regard.
Well, I was going to say that's not even the only thing that he said that you didn't like, because he came out with his recruiter rankings and put I believe Shire was 3.
I thought he was 4.
Was he 4? We can fact check that. But
I'm gonna find it.
He wasn't top 2. I know that.
I got it. No, Shire was 3. You're right. So he had Cal 1, which I'm fine with. He had Penny 2. Okay. Shire 3, Juwan Howard 4, Leonard Hamilton 5. So, big fan of Leonard Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure. Chris Beard almost in the transfer portal, I would give the nod to over Leonard Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
John Shire, I feel like it's a snub because people are like, oh, it's the brand. But it's not like Shire wasn't recruiting the guys from like 2016 classes on. So he was talking to Zion, he was talking to Cam Reddish, he was talking to Marvin Bagley, he was talking to all those guys. And now he's bringing guys in on his own. And Penny, he's had 3 top 10 recruits. He's had Wiseman. He brought in Emoni Bates this year. He's got Jalen Duren as well. Got both of them to reclass. He flipped Boogie Ellis from Duke to Memphis. He's done some good things, but Ellis is no longer with the program. Wiseman played 3 games. Don't know. Duren seems like a one and done. Bates
Cisse's gone.
Bates, you don't know what he's going to do. Cisse's gone, correct. So, and he hasn't made the tournament. So I feel like if we're going to say, oh, it's the brand, then on the flip side, you got to be Petty's yet to make a tournament. We haven't yet see him take those classes and make something. So that's my one issue with it.
Yeah, that's it was a bit of a weird list. I think all the guys that were on the list definitely deserved to be there. They're definitely very talented recruiters who seem to get top guys every year. But just when you kind of start to parse out what puts guys over each other, it starts to make a little less sense. I like, Penny's been getting these, top 5 guys, but then the rest of it, I like Juwan Howard because he kind of gets these really complete classes of really solid guys. And so for that reason, I'd probably put him above Penny. I'd put Shire above Penny right now, just with if we're looking at a snapshot in time with this list, Shire's above Penny. Just Shire's been dominating lately. I don't really have an issue with Leonard Hamilton at 5. I would throw out Mark Few for consideration, just with what he's done recently. And a few years ago, I mean, he really kind of was dominating the international recruit scene. But I mean, recently with guys like Jalen Suggs, Chet Holmgren, he's been going off too. So yeah, it's kind of not an awful list, but I think once you really start to think about it, it is a little questionable. And the shade on Sharp thing is definitely absurd.
Yes.
Because I don't know, like Zion Williamson had one of the best seasons we've ever seen in college basketball. And he didn't even win a national title. So like just asking somebody to repeat that or even be better than that it's a little crazy. And like you said, I like Sharp, but I just don't.
Yeah.
I don't see it. And it's going to be hard to be that efficient, especially since he doesn't play.
He's a guard.
Position. Yeah, he's a guard. So, yeah. So, all right. So now we're kind of done with that. So we're going to move into our Big Ten preview. Once again, these rankings were blind. I did not see Alex's. He did not see mine. And so we're going to go in reverse order of how we think the conference will finish. So we're going to start with the teams that were in last place and work our way up. Hopefully this time we won't spend as much time on the bottom of the conference as we did with the ACC. And then just a quick plug before we get started. Podcast is presented by Vendetta Sports Media. Go to vendettasportsmedia.com. Alex and I will be pumping out some college basketball content on there, some written stuff, some rankings, some opinion articles, some team previews. So be sure to go check that out. Big shout out to the people working behind the scenes at Vendetta who allow us to make this happen.
Absolutely.
So to get started, 14th place, last place in the Big Ten. We have the same team. It's the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And Minnesota was in the news relatively recently because former Gonzaga star Jalen Suggs, who's now at the Orlando Magic, came out and said, oh yeah, like I definitely would have played for Minnesota if Pitino had recruited me harder. And a lot of people were like, you know, a lot of Minnesota fans were pretty butthurt by that. A lot of them were like, this is just, he's full of it. Like, there's no way. And after he said that, a bunch of other, you know, former Division I stars and current NBA guys were like, oh yeah, I would have played for Minnesota too if like they had recruited me better. I'm not one to say that they're lying. Like, I don't really have any reason to say like, oh, Matt Hurt was lying about going to Minnesota. But at the same time, like, you're really going to pass up playing at Duke to play for Minnesota? Like, seriously? So it's a little weird, but if they're all telling the truth and we don't really have any super big reason to not believe them, Minnesota could have had a really good team. So I wrote an article on that. Go check it out.
Yes.
But moving to this year's iteration of Minnesota, they are probably going to be really bad. They're going to be really bad. They lost their two best players, lost a ton of depth, first-year head coach. And last year, even with all, you know, their talent that they had, with like Marcus Carr and Liam Robbins and them, they went 0-10 on the road. Did not win a single road game. One of the craziest home and away splits you'll ever see. I think there was something like 11-4 at home and 0-10 on the road, and missed the tournament. And so this year, it's definitely going to be a step down from that. They just don't have it this year. Alex, do you have any more thoughts on Minnesota?
You've got a new coach in Ben Johnson who was just kind of thrown into the fire back in March when Pitino was fired. While he did go there, I'm not 100% sure that he can turn it around in a season. It's going to take some time. The Gophers already kind of struggle with Marcus Carr, and he was one of the nation's best scoring guards. So, I mean, just looking at, again, the roster turnover was immense. John Rothstein did like a roster preview for every team in the Big Ten, and just counting, they've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They have 8 transfers coming in, and then 2, I believe, are freshmen. So that's 10 newcomers to a team that lost their head coach, has a new one, and is trying to fight in college basketball's deepest conference. Like, if they can win maybe 3-4 games, I'll be surprised. Like that would be phenomenal.
Yeah, it's going to be a really rough go for them in conference play. And the thing is too that two of the guys they're bringing in are Division II guys.
Yeah.
Which no disrespect like to Division II. Like a lot of those guys can really hoop, but
it's tough to translate.
It's tough to translate. Like that's almost different than it's going to be rough, and they don't have the depth. They don't really have, I don't think they really have that, one go-to scorer anymore. So that's going to make it even more difficult for them to pull out wins. And overall, just not going to be that great of a team. It's the Big Ten. Teams beat each other up. They could win maybe a game or two, but just on the whole, looking at their whole season, I think it's more likely than not that they will finish at the bottom. All right, next up, number 13. We both had Nebraska.
Okay. Nice.
So that helps. The one bright spot I will say for Nebraska is that Bryce McGowan is going to be a stud.
Absolutely.
5-star freshman coming in. He's gonna be their best player. He has a real shot for freshman of the year in the Big Ten. The problem though is that the rest of the Nebraska team is not overwhelmingly impressive. They do bring in Alonzo Verge, who was a 14 points a game scorer.
He's a good scorer at Arizona State.
Yeah, so he was solid, but after that, their front court is a little questionable. Trey McGowan's will be good. He'll be fine. But he'll probably be, he'll be their third option. And so we'll see how much he is able to contribute. He did average 10 points a game last year. So if he can maybe step up to 12, 13, we could see this team maybe be a little better. But on the whole,
Yeah, beyond that, again, we're kind of crunched for time because there's 14 teams in this conference. So, I think you hit it. McGowan's just going to take a bunch of shots and score. Alonzo Verge, I remember watching him score 40 points at St. Mary's in that 40-point loss. He can score, but, it's going to be so tough when January, February hits and you've already taken a few punches and now you've got a 3-game consecutive road trip. So, it'll be tough. And again, I agree with you. The front court, there's question marks. So, yeah.
All right. So that's 13. Let's move to 12. Actually, we had the same thing up through 11. So this should be good. But yeah, Penn State at 12. Originally, when I was thinking about this, I had them at 11 over the team that we're going to talk about next. But I convinced myself that they'll finish below them. So, give me your thoughts. Give me your thoughts on Penn State.
I really like the Jalen Pickett transfer. He can score. He can shoot. Great height for a PG. I think sometimes teams kind of get lost in that 6'1" to 6'2" guard where maybe they're a bit undersized, but he's 6'4" and his frame is filled out. He won Player of the Year and was first team in the MAC last year. And people were saying that he lacked motivation. So if you can win Player of the Year and be all first team All MAC for 3 years, it's a really solid pickup. They returned Lundy, Harar, and Dredd, which is positive, but it's just one of those teams again. They have good pieces. They'll steal a couple of games that they shouldn't steal. But beyond, to me, just looking at the roster, it's a 7-man rotation, stopping at Greg Lee. And they really need Pickett to step it up from Siena. Cornwall, who's transferring Gardner-Webb. needs to play. And then Harar, whose post game is excellent. He can swallow up paint
Mm-hmm.
touches, but he's got good footwork. He's 6'9". It's still an undersized center. So he's the tallest man on the roster. So the front court could have some issues. But, again, they're battling to get out of the basement of the Big Ten.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said about Pickett, because it reminds me of what people were saying about who was we literally just talked about the ACC, and I can't remember his name, but who was the guy who transferred from Radford to Louisville? What was his name?
I know. Oh, geez.
Yeah. You know who I'm talking about. But people were saying like he wasn't gonna play, he was gonna play, but that he wasn't really gonna produce after being like, first team all conference and in a mid major, and like he ended up actually basically carrying that team.
Carly Jones.
Yeah, Carly Jones. I don't know how I forgot that. That's what
he carried that Louisville team last year.
Yeah, he carried them. So I kind of see a similar situation with Pickett where I think he's going to ball. And I do have some questions about their front court, but I think they're maybe a little underrated. Harar averaged 8 and 8 last year. He could potentially, level up to like averaging a double-double this year, which would be huge for them. And Seth Lundy's
tough though.
It is, yeah. But Seth Lundy's solid, and so best case scenario, though, this team is still going to be bottom half of the conference.
They could find themselves on the bubble.
They could, and last year was a little interesting for them because in a lot of like analytics and a lot of metrics, they were actually looked pretty solid, and were a team that if you were just looking at like advanced stats and stuff, you'd say, oh, this is like a tournament team, and they were horrible. So I don't know what the discrepancy is there, but like this, they're good enough to be on the bubble. They're good enough, but looking at some of these other teams in the conference, there's more talent. There's more, proven sort of players that like we know what to expect. And with a lot of these bottom teams, a lot of it is we have no idea what to expect, and that's usually a problem in college basketball for anybody. So moving on, after 12, 11, Northwestern, these are your boys.
Absolutely.
Your boys. Yeah. How are we feeling about Northwestern this year?
In terms of like the starting five, they lost Miller Kopp, which in terms of stretching the floor, it's a major loss, and he went to Indiana. So just lost him to a team that could contend for a title. But Bowie and Audige can score the ball. It's just whether or not they do it efficiently. Because Bowie had that like 3-4 games last season, started Big Ten conference play, where he looked like he was going to light the world on fire. And then he kind of trailed off for a couple of games. Audige can score. Audige is going to be the go-to option on this team. Baran is back. He can score the ball. He can stretch the floor at least. And Pete Nance, he's got to – like he's kind of, in my mind, always been in that – like he's really solid. Like he's getting 11 and 7. But as what should be the focal point of that team, he does bring the ball up the court. So often Collins runs the ball through him, whether it's in the top of the key or through the post. He needs to step it up. And Ryan Young could get minutes in the front court too. But again, you just got the freshmen are looking like it's just fine. They're going to be a fine team. They're going to be solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's they're gonna be fine. Again, I originally had them below Penn State, and then I remembered like that, Boo Booey's like good, and Chase Audige is good, and Pete, like I kind of just like the guys that they have. I don't think they're gonna, they're not gonna be world beaters, but they're solid. Like they're a solid team with guys who are returning, with guys who are experienced. And losing Miller Kopp definitely hurts. That guy, he's lights out from 3. So, that's definitely not a piece you want to lose. But overall, got some good depth, decent depth. They got, they have a few freshmen coming in who could contribute right away. So, we'll see. We'll see with Northwestern. Do you know if they play? Do you play Indiana at home?
I hope we do. I'll be at that game.
Yeah, that'll be sick.
I can find that out as we move on to the next team.
Okay. Yeah. Let's move on. So at 10, it's going to be, let me look at my list.
We do have Indiana at home.
Nice. That'll be a fun game. That'll be really fun.
Yes.
Okay, next it's going to be Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
so
you had him at
Wisconsin.
You had him at 10. I had him at 9.
Okay.
The problem I see with this team is that really all they have is Brad Davison. That's basically it. There's something to be said for, Greg Gard being a good coach, and but they just, in the last, even the last 2 years, they've just lost some of their most talented guys, and I just don't really see what the path for this team. I think they're going to be solid defensively, but as far as scoring the ball and being a legitimate threat on offense, I just don't really see it. I don't know that Brad Davison can really carry a team like that. He's he's an amazing college basketball player. But yeah, it's they're not deep. It's honestly worst case scenario, we could see them finish below one of these teams that we already talked about.
Yeah.
Just because it's not there. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Wisconsin. I don't know if you have anything else you want to add.
Not a ton more. Just that they're gonna play Wisconsin basketball like Gard has preached them to do. It's gonna be fairly consistent from what we've seen last year. Davison is gonna have so many touches. That offense is gonna run through him. But according to Three-Man Weave and The Athletic, they don't want him running point, which means that it's gonna fall on a newcomer. And which is why I'm a little lower, because I always feel like if you have a returning floor general, you get a check mark in my book, and they don't have that. So that's why they're a little lower than some of these teams that I'll have in 8 and 9.
Yeah, it's Greg Gard can maybe make just get some wins out of nowhere, but I just don't see how the model of give Davison the ball late in the shot clock is going to be a good a recipe for success in the Big Ten. So yeah, not really expecting too much from Wisconsin, but hey, maybe some of their newcomers are incredible, and we're looking at this team as a bubble. We're looking at this team as a bubble team. Teams that play good defense usually early in the season are pretty solid. So maybe they pull out a couple wins early in the conference season that sets them up well. But yeah, just again, we really aren't seeing. There's a lot of depth concerns with this team.
Yeah.
And so that's never good.
Yeah.
That's never good, especially in the Big Ten. So, all right, moving on from Wisconsin. This one's going to be close actually, but
okay.
I think it's going to be Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah. So Iowa at 9, I guess. Again, this is a similar thing. They lost their
so
best players in the offseason. They lost a lot. They
lost a National Player of the Year.
Lost National Player of the Year in Luka Garza. They don't have Weiss Camp anymore to just hit threes.
Frederick transferred to Kentucky.
Frederick is gone. They bring back Bohannon, which is good.
He wasn't going to come back McCaffrey.
Either. Yeah, so he was going to be gone, but the thing is, he has to be the guy now, and I don't know that he can. It's kind of a similar situation to Wisconsin in that they have like a guy or two guys coming back who are like good, but that shouldn't, like, they won't be used to being like the guy. Like last year, Iowa could just default to Luka Garza. Like they just feed the post, and they don't have a post monster anymore. No. They lost a lot of shooting, so they're going to have to kind of transition into playing this like less of like a sort of 7 seconds, like just like, you know, get the shooters open type of offense. And I don't know that they have like the personnel to play like a defensive brand of basketball. And that's just not like what McCaffrey does. Like McCaffrey wants to shoot. Like they had one of the best offenses in the country last year, but their defense is really what hurt them. Yeah. And now they're losing guys who I think were also some of their best defenders. So I don't see how they're going to be way worse off. Bottom half of the Big Ten, I think, for sure. But it's just a question of like whether sort of those end of the rotation guys who are coming back this year will like step up into bigger roles.
Yeah. No, I mean, they'll be able to shoot the ball. I had them at 8, which means you probably have Rutgers at 8. But I'm a little higher on Keegan Murray, just being able to kind of carry this team a little bit. He really, really surprised me last year as a freshman. And so what he can bring on both ends of the floor, he's a lanky, he can play, he can guard the 4. So he's 6'8". So he can guard out on the wing. He can probably guard in the post. I think he hits double digits in terms of scoring numbers, and he'll finally get sufficient minutes. While he was a little bit streaky at points, this team will still be able to shoot. So they'll surround him with shooters. Toussaint can really create despite his height. He'll get high pick and rolls are going to be great for him just because he's so quick, lightning quick. Mm-hmm. And you can stretch the floor with Bohannon and the McCaffrey brothers. Aaron Eulis too. I'd like to see him. I liked him when he played for I think it was Mean Streets on the EYBL. But it's a solid team. Again, I feel like I'm just going to keep repeating the word solid. But teams in the Big Ten are just solid. Like if they go to other conferences, they could push for. But they're in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Like my brain died there for a second, but
yeah,
they're in the Big Ten.
Yeah, but I think this is going to be a team that is live by the 3, die by the 3. And so we could see a lot of, I think, variability in how they could finish. Some games, like when they're hot, it'll look like they could beat anybody. But then other teams, when they're not hitting shots and their defense isn't good, which it probably won't be, they're going to look really rough. Yeah. So, yeah, this is another team. Like, I hate just saying like, oh, every team in the Big Ten could be a bubble team, but like it's kind of true with most of these teams. Other than maybe like Nebraska and Minnesota, I just don't see them making any push for the tournament. But like all these other teams, like you win like a couple extra games and suddenly you're in the discussion because people will weight the Big Ten like a little higher because it's a tough conference. And
yeah,
so yeah, we'll see. But again, Iowa just lost a lot, and yeah, it's just maybe not there. So I think you're maybe expecting to talk about Rutgers next, and we are going to talk about Rutgers next. I was going to say, yeah, because I
so
actually,
surprised.
Well, I had them at 7.
Whoa, who you have at 8?
Yeah, I had I think Michigan State at 8.
I don't understand that. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, with Rutgers, you had them at 9. I had them at 7. For me, I really like that they brought back both Geo Baker and Ron Harper, and
yeah,
they were a good, like, pretty decent team last year. But I really like. I think Baker and Harper just hard carry this team, like, to like middle of the Big Ten, and that's kind of what they did last year. And they did that last year with a conference that I think I think teams were maybe a little more talented that they were going up against versus now. Like they won't really have to worry about Iowa a whole lot. I mean, they kind of will, but like not as much. Because now Harper won't have to defend Luka Garza, and Wisconsin, like we said, lost a lot. I think they finished above them, but I guess I'm really high on just Baker and Harper returning and what that means for this team, and I kind of threw any of my concerns out the window because of that, but
I can accept that.
Yeah. So yeah, like I don't know. The thing with the Big Ten is like, as far as like the individual talent goes in the Big Ten, like just picking out players, it's probably the best in the country as far as like returning players go. Like the guys returning, and we'll talk about most of them like towards the top half of the list, but the returners in this conference are just like insane. Like so many of them are talented, and so like that really has an impact, I think, on a lot of the top teams. But talking about a team like Rutgers, I like it. I don't know.
Yeah.
The following is brought to you in partnership by Symbol. Symbol is a new sports marketplace where you can trade shares of professional teams like stocks. You love sports. You interested in fantasy sports without the weekly annoyance of fantasy league upkeep? Then Symbol's the app for you. With Symbol, fantasy sports is going to a whole other level. How it works is simple. You buy Symbol shares for your favorite sim teams on the app. When your sim team wins, you get automatic cash deposits, and you don't lose any money when they lose. That's it. So if you follow trends across football, basketball, and baseball, and you think your team is a sleeper, simply invest in your favorite sim teams on Symbol and watch your virtual portfolio prove you right or wrong. And if you want to get in on the action right away, Vendetta Sports Media's got you covered. Go to symbol.app/Vendetta and use our exclusive promo code Vendetta, and you'll get a $10 bonus when making your first deposit. Symbol, taking fantasy sports to a whole other level.
No, I mean, it's the Harper and Baker show, and I think we can leave it at that. I'd like to see three-man weave pointed it out. Harper wasn't the same after he went down with that ankle injury. Assuming he doesn't get injured this year and he returns to that level of production early in the season, this is a scary Rutgers team. But if you can defend their 2-point attack, I don't know where else the scoring comes from. So it's two-faceted, but that's my opinion on Rutgers.
Yeah, I think this team has a pretty solid floor with those two guys, assuming they're able to stay healthy the whole year. But I think they'll sort of always be, at minimum, a team that is like people are projecting to be in the tournament, if not like a top, 10 seed. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's Rutgers. All right, let's move on. Michigan State. You had them at 7. I had them at 8. So you get us started on Michigan State.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Max Christie. I was in on him when Duke offered him back in like 2019, watching a ton of tape. He can really shoot the ball. Mm-hmm. You gotta replace some of that scoring with Rocket Watts, which as a Duke fan, I'm nightmares of, because I mean his production was so inconsistent last year, yet it came. Like, he just torched Duke. Aaron Henry, massive loss. But yeah, I feel like most of the country is super high on Tyson Walker. And I know a lot of analysts have been in on practices, and he just seems to be working well with that offense. So I'll trust their opinion in that regard. And then the front court of Gabe Brown, Joey Hauser, and Marcus Bingham. Like, it's kind of like Hauser can stretch the floor. Brown is good, but Bingham's your paint guy. He can get touches around the rim. He's got good footwork. He can finish off lobs. And Gabe Brown's kind of like your do-it-all wing. So, Malik Hall's back too. You got Hoggard, you got Marble. Like, the front court seems really, really maybe not talented, but really, I'm trying not to use the word solid.
Yeah.
It will be beneficial. I don't know. Solid. It's solid.
Yeah,
it's solid. I can't. Solid. Oh gosh, Courtney, if you can have a solid counter for this episode, just run it up. Just run it up.
Yeah.
But I like Hauser. And he needs to be more consistent from last season. He had some games where he tailed off. He can stretch the floor. We've all seen it. But I think that Christie should start. So there's your starting five. But there's the Spartans. And Tom Izzo can coach. So that's why I have him at 7.
That's kind of why I even had them as high as 8. Because, like, looking at the roster, to be honest, I wasn't like, wow, like, oh, the Spartans, like, oh, I'm so scared. Like,
so it's solid.
I wouldn't say that.
Oh,
necessarily.
Wow.
Maybe you would, but yeah, it's I like Hauser. I like what he can do as far as like stretching the floor. I think a lot of the projections for this team are banking on Tyson Walker translating his scoring from Northeastern, and I think I think he definitely could. I don't know that it's necessarily as much of a sure thing as some people have made it out to be, and I like Michigan State. The thing is, Michigan State was not that good last year, and they lost their best player. So it's like just taking those two things makes me kind of hesitant to be like, oh, Michigan State, like, you know, buying in on Michigan State, because yeah, Izzo can coach, but like it didn't really amount to a whole lot last year. They were a play-in team, so we'll see. I definitely appreciate what you said about Max Christie. I agree with you. I think he is a guy who can definitely contribute and score the ball right away, and just be someone who elevates this basketball team to, you know, a higher level. But yeah, just I don't know. Looking at this roster compared to some of the other like teams that we ranked higher in the Big Ten, I do think there's definitely some mismatches there. And I mean, yeah, but you know, Izzo gonna Izzo, and you know, we'll see with Michigan State. But as for me, it just came down to like they weren't that good, lost their best player, like, so I guess I'm a little low on them. But all right, moving on. Are we in the top 6 now?
Yeah,
we're in the top 6. All right, cool. So these next 2 teams, actually, we flipped, so we can talk about them in any order. We had different teams at 6 and 5. But let's talk about Indiana. Let's talk about Indiana. You had them at 6, I had them at 5. Okay. I'll let you go first on Indiana, because I want to kind of gather my thoughts and how I'm gonna approach this one.
You've got Mike Woodson. He wasn't necessarily all too successful in the NBA. We're just trying to see if it's going to translate to college, and all metrics indicate that it doesn't always. However, he has Trayce Jackson-Davis. And Trayce Jackson-Davis can solve a lot of those problems. I think also in the transfer portal, he did well. Brought in Kopp, who will stretch the floor. He'll take attention away from Davis if someone tries to collapse and double team. You have to respect Kopp's three-point shooting. Xavier Johnson, that Duke game, again, I keep going back to Duke, but it's because I watch all those games, and just the guys who kill Duke stay with me. Johnson had 9 points, which is average. Found a different word for solid. But he had 11 assists, and they just ran that Duke defense up. His creativity is like, again, the pick and roll is the essence of today's game. If you could stick him in that with either Race Thompson or Trayce Jackson-Davis, Johnson will do his job. He can score the ball too. His shift, he's crafty. And yeah, like three-man, we've said he was the ACC's highest used player, so you can assume, he won't be the highest used player in Indiana. You can assume that they still will use him in a similar way that Jeff Capel did. And Tamar Bates, I'm really excited because he kind of skyrocketed up leaderboards in the 2021 class. I'm excited to see what he can do. So Christian Lander too. I don't know why I blanked on him. He'll get minutes. I'd like to see him step it up. Again, he's basically a freshman. He reclassed early and joined early. This is basically his freshman year. So there's my Indiana take.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sort of similar. I really, really like what this team can do on the offensive end, because I think there's so many ways that they can beat you. They can run the pick and roll with Davis, who will be, I think, almost guaranteed to be like a first team All Big Ten guy.
Basically. His usage.
Yeah, his usage will be through the roof. And even if for whatever reason, that isn't working, they have shooters everywhere. They have the guys that can stretch the floor. I have been critical of the Mike Woodson hire because I just don't understand why people think it was just a no-brainer, success move. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of things that I think this is a great roster for him specifically, because he can kind of bring some of this NBA run and gun type of style to Indiana, because they have the shooters to make it happen.
Absolutely.
And they have a dominant big man, which in the Big Ten, that's kind of the way to go. That's the formula. I like Xavier Johnson. Miller Kopp, he's going to hit threes. He's going to hit a lot of them, especially when most of the defensive attention will be focused on Davis. So, I do think the ceiling for this team is, I think, winning the Big Ten.
Oh, wow.
I think offensively they're good enough to do that, but
that'll be tough.
Just because it will be tough. But I think everything goes right for them. Maybe some other teams knock each other around and they come out of it. But I think it's within reach to be a top 3 team in the Big Ten at least.
Okay.
But the thing that kind of holds me back from being all in on Indiana being that good is the Mike Woodson hire, because I'm still not convinced, and he's got to show me. So that's where we are with Indiana. Let's move on.
Your boys.
Maryland, my boys,
Maryland
Terrapins.
You should just take this one.
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts. And I've kind of sort of the cycle for Maryland fans, for those of you who aren't aware, is that we start out with pretty high hopes for the team in a given season. They generally fail to meet those expectations and then don't make the Sweet 16, even with a talented roster that should probably make the Sweet 16. Then there are a lot of calls for Mark Turgeon's job, which then the school will sign him to an extension, which means he's not getting fired. And then we win the offseason early, and then we lose the offseason late, and then we buy back in, and the cycle starts over again. So I'm at the point in the cycle where I have kind of bought back in, because I see how this, I see kind of what we're going for here. But at the same time, I hate that we lost Daryl Morcell to Marquette. I think that is awful. He was Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, heart and soul of the team. He's not back. We lost Aaron Wiggins to the NBA, which happy for the dude, but at the same time, we need his athleticism and his shooting on the wing, because we don't really have that now. We bring in Fats Russell from Rhode Island, which I like the pickup. He's a scorer, but he's also super inefficient. We bring in Wahab from Georgetown. I actually like that pickup maybe more than Fats Russell, because I think we need somebody to kind of, bang on the boards down low. And, that's the only way we're really going to survive as a team, because in the last couple of years, our front court rotation has been an absolute disaster. It was kind of just Jalen Smith, and then that's it. Last year we were running Dante Scott at the 5, and he's 6'7", so that's never going to work. As good as he is, defensively, just not going to work. Brought in some transfers. I'm actually pretty high on our freshmen. I like Julian Reese. I like Ike Cornish. I think they could both be pretty good. James Graham, he came in early last year and saw some minutes. So we'll see. He did look kind of rough, but I mean that's kind of how you'd expect a high school senior to look coming in mid-season in the Big Ten. Hakeem Hart, I like him a lot. He had one game, I forget who it was against last year, but he scored like 30-something points, and it was against a team that wasn't very good and where he was getting a lot of touches. But I like kind of the potential, and he's elevated his game like ever since he's been with Maryland, so I like that. Eric Ayala, I have to touch on him. I think he'll make an all Big Ten team. He'll be the kind of de facto first option. And he can shoot. He's been running point. He sort of ran point last year and did pretty well with that. So I think he maybe builds on that a little bit this year. Cause he was sort of playing, he played a little bit of on ball when Anthony Cowan was here, but they kind of like flip flopped. And he also like was 6-man too. So, but he'll have like a really established role as a senior this year and should get a lot of touches. We bring in Ian Martinez from Utah, who super athletic, but coming off an injury, which could hamper some of that like explosive athleticism. And then we added a late transfer in Xavier Greene from Old Dominion, who was like, he won some award in whatever conference that was for, I don't think it was player of the year, but like he's supposed to be like fine. I don't know how much I like him to really light it up though, like contribute a ton. Yeah, so that's sort of my thoughts on Maryland. I think our transfer wins early with getting Russell and Wahab from Georgetown, and like I think that'll help a lot. Like we needed them. If we didn't have them, we're looking at a really, really not good team. I don't love Turgeon. I'm going to be honest. I just think looking at the track record of what he's done with the talented teams that he's had, he has to do better. We've had some really great players come through College Park and just have not produced. We have nothing to show for it. And I do appreciate what he did with the team last year. That I definitely expected it to be a bottom half of the Big Ten type of team and like miss the tournament, but they made the tournament and beat UConn. And so they definitely exceeded my expectations. So I'm kind of basing some of my projections for this year off of that and how guys played. And yeah, I want them to be good so bad. And I don't think this is the most talented team they've had in the last like 5 years, but they have the pieces to make it work. And I think they'll make the tournament, could maybe steal a game or two. And so those are my thoughts on Maryland. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to say that
I feel like you hit all of it. I think we can just move on.
Yeah, we can just move on. All right. At 4, we both had Ohio State.
Nice.
So I was talking a lot. So give me your thoughts on Ohio State.
I think I said earlier in this episode, I'm always concerned about undersized front courts. In this regard, I am not, because we've seen what Young, Key, and Liddell can all do despite their frame and size. Key could really bully people in the paint last year, much to my surprise. I hadn't seen much of him. Liddell's post work is incredible, and they will really stretch the floor. Young can stretch it. Liddell can be a spot-up shooter. The reason I have them at 4 is that they lost Dwayne Washington, and I know what the metrics say, that they were basically the same regardless of whether or not he was on the court. Not necessarily to me in the eye test, but his loss, I feel like, is going to be more significant than the metrics say. Jamari Wheeler, I know that too many people have kind of keyed up in that starting point guard spot. Needs to have better production than he had at Penn State. Suing probably needs to become like a 14 points a game scorer, but it's a good team. Their ceiling is they win this. They may not run away with it, but they could win it on the last weekend of the regular season. And Holtman's a good coach, so that's my Ohio State take.
Yeah. Holtman has done wonders with this team in the last couple of years. And honestly he's kind of kept them in the mix really since he's been there. And so I do think they take a step down from being a top 2 seed in the tournament. Like, that's a very high bar to clear, especially when you lose a guy like Washington. But I definitely agree that Liddell could make a legitimate push for Big Ten Player of the Year. Like you said, he's a beast in the post. He just has his footwork is insane. Like, he might be one of the best like guys in terms of like post footwork in the conference, if not the country. And so that's huge because a lot of just the Big Ten is like, do you have somebody in the post?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I do like them from that standpoint. Backcourt, maybe a little, like it's like I don't really know.
But with that front court, you don't necessarily have to do everything. You just need to be a true create and go.
Yeah, it's true. So like we kind of
open
know
up space.
what the game plan for them will be. And yeah, I agree with you. I have seen things that say like, oh, like with Washington, like off the floor, they're basically the same team. Like I also agree. Like I just don't see how that really makes any sense. I just don't see how like you can spin that as like, oh, they'll be about the same without Washington. I don't get it. So, but hey, like we have them as a consensus top 4 team in the Big Ten, so that's nothing to sneeze at. And they're going to be
a top 4 seed in the tournament.
So yes, I would agree with that. So that's Ohio State. Let's move on. Number 3, we both had Illinois.
Fantastic.
Huge that they brought Kofi Coburn back.
Massive.
That is, if they lose him, they're falling off a cliff. He, I think, probably the preseason favorite for Big Ten Player of the Year, I'd guess. I mean, I haven't looked at anything.
I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, with Trace Jackson Davis, CJ, like
Hunter Dickinson.
I think it's a toss-up. Hunter Dickinson.
Travion Williams. We'll get to him.
Yeah. So, but up there for sure. Losing to Sunmu probably it hurts. Like he was amazing out of the pick and roll. Like pretty good creator and not the most like efficient scorer, but as far as like, it's always nice to have like an oversized like playmaker on your team, and they don't have that anymore. But I do think Curbelo really steps it up this year, and can kind of slide into that like primary initiator type of role.
I love Curbelo.
They bring back. I like him too. They bring back Trent Frazier. That helps. Yeah, I mean, overall, this team, like, it's kind of going to be a similar thing to what we saw with these Iowa teams with Luka Garza, where you're just feeding Coburn in the post. And, like, you have some shooters who can help you out, but, like, that's the primary thing. It's just get the ball to Coffee Coburn and, like, let him work. And this was a 1 seed last year. And, I do think losing Io hurts. Like I do. Like he's a phenomenal player, but I don't think they're gonna fall off like a whole lot. I do think we are still looking at a team that is a top 3-4 seed in the national tournament. And I don't know. Do you have anything?
No, I mean, I'm not gonna add a ton. I think I'm a little higher in terms of the production from the rest of the team than maybe you are, because I really think they can stretch the floor. I think Williams coming back is a massive boost. We know Frazier can really score the ball. Alfonso Plummer from Utah, averaged 14 at Utah, you can figure that probably translate to maybe 10 to 12 in the Big Ten. I mean, if he's your sixth man and your sixth man is getting 10 to 12 a game and he can shoot the ball, he's really smooth on the offensive end. So this is a team that will be able to stretch the floor. Omar Payne as a backup center, just as like a traditional big, is really nice. But I'm really high on Curbelo. We saw the flashes. It's now his team, and we get to see him go, and I'm excited.
Yeah, it's I guess I'm not necessarily low on like the rest of the team. Like I definitely think they can and probably will produce. It is just like I think this team just like they go as Kofi goes, and like I don't know. That's just kind of how I see it, but I do like that they have the ability to stretch the floor, and I think you need to have multiple options on offense to beat teams in the Big Ten. So, and defensively, I think they'll be okay. I don't know that they'll be like amazing, but I think they'll be pretty good. All right, so we actually our top two is the same, but the order is not the same.
Wow.
Yeah, so we can talk about these teams in any order. So which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about Michigan.
Okay, let's talk about Michigan since we sort of referenced Hunter Dickinson and yeah. So I'll explain my reasoning for why I put them at 2 instead of 1 because I think most people probably would put them at slot them in at 1. I think this team like Juwan Howard, we've said it already, amazing recruiter. We'll bring in freshmen that will contribute right away and make things happen. They bring back Hunter Dickinson, who is one of, if not the best big man in the Big Ten, as much as I don't like the dude. Because he has this like weird beef with Maryland for not recruiting him, even though they did. I don't really get it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. But anyway, he's amazing. I'll say it. He's a fantastic guy to have down low. And the problem that I have with the team is like they lost most of their like contributors from last year. They lost Franz Wagner to the draft. They lost Mike Smith, who late in the season was really good for them. They lost Isaiah Livers. They lost Shawnee Brown, who was the Wake Forest transfer. And that to me is
alarming.
I don't know. It's a little alarming that they lost. Like it'd be different if they lost like maybe 2 of those guys, but losing like 4 guys who like really put in work for the team makes me, a little wary of them, especially when a team like Purdue is bringing like
their top 8 scorers back.
Their top guys back. So that's kind of why I put them at 2. Just because it's not that I have depth concerns. Like I put them at 2. Like it's just that I didn't put them at 1. So it's not that I think like, oh, like Michigan's gonna fall off. No, they're still gonna be really good. It's just I don't know if just looking at what they have, I feel necessarily comfortable being like just giving them the 1 spot. So that's where I am on Michigan.
I don't think you're wrong. I think I did a piece or I did a post earlier in the summer about ranking the recruiting classes, and I was high on Michigan's. It's very, like we talked about earlier, Howard gets complete classes. You've got Frankie Collins, Kobe Buffkin, and Musa Diabate, who all figure to come off the bench. But, I mean, Diabate is a 5-star. I just want people to think about that for a second. You got a 5-star coming off the bench. Caleb Halsen, big fan of him. Loved watching him at Montverde. Can score at all 3 levels. Can really shoot the ball. Eli Brooks is back. I know you said Mike Smith left. I think Devontae Jones can just kind of walk into that role and fill it.
Yeah, that's fair.
So Jones, and then Hunter Dickinson's back. And I think I'm higher on Dickinson than I am on like Travion Williams. And so that's why I had Michigan right now winning. But again, like I said, where it was like Carolina and Duke last week, 1A, 1B, the Big Ten could be 1A Michigan, 1B Purdue, or vice versa. Either of them could totally run away with it.
Mm-hmm. I definitely I think that was for me, like when making my list, I think that that was the easiest for me. It was just to be like, that's the clear top two is Michigan and Purdue.
Absolutely.
I think it's like, not, I can't really say far and away. Like, I don't know that the separation will be that crazy, but I do think like they have to be anybody's preseason top two. Like, I don't see how anybody could make a case that like any of these other teams like Illinois, Ohio State, I don't see how you put them above Purdue or Michigan. I just don't. I don't see it. They just bring back too much, and the guys that like I think Halsen's going to be a stud. I think it's going to be between him and McGowan's probably for freshman of the year, and I would probably default to Halsen just because his team will be so much better.
McGowan's will have such a higher usage rate.
Yeah, he's gonna be basically like he's gonna be Isaiah Wong. Like he's gonna put in work on a team that maybe isn't the best. Although we like Miami, but I think I would probably default to him just because the team will be good, and Juwan Howard's a good coach.
Yep.
So we'll see. I forget, who did they lose to in the tournament?
UCLA
last year. UCLA. Oh, that's right. Of course they lost to UCLA. So that would have been in the Elite Eight, right? That they lost. Yeah. So look out for Michigan because they know how to beat teams and they have the guys to do it. So, All right, time to talk about Purdue. It's our last team to preview.
Oh yeah.
Before we wrap things up. My take on Purdue is I am very, very high on Jaden Ivey. Like, very high on him.
I love him.
I think he's going to be
so
awesome.
good.
I think he's going to be really, really good. So they bring back Ivey. I mean, like you said, they bring back their top 8?
Top 8 scores. The top 8 scores are back.
That's crazy. Like, Travion Williams is going to be awesome. Again, just another, go-to big man in the Big Ten.
Got Zach Edey, just a giant to just throw in there whenever you want.
Yeah, Zach Edey. I have a friend from college who told me that he's like a friend of Zach Edey, and like somehow ended up playing pickup basketball against him, and just was like, he's a monster.
Yeah, no chance.
Yeah, but
Jaden Ivey's the catalyst.
Jaden Ivey is the catalyst, and I think the biggest factor in whether this team hits their ceiling is whether he takes the next step, like people think he will, because we kind of know what we're getting for the most part with like Travion Williams and Zach Edey and the kind of the rest of their, starting rotation. But if Jaden Ivey he scored 11 points a game last year. If he gets up to like
16,
like it's definitely possible. And I think that's kind of going to be the main, like you said, like the main catalyst for like how good this Purdue team ends up being. Because Matt Painter, great coach, always keeps Purdue kind of
always. Doesn't matter always. The team. Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter what team this might be the best Purdue team he's
ever had.
Time. Maybe ever. I think ever. I don't know the whole history of Purdue basketball, but I'm comfortable with
I'll say it now too. I'll say it now.
Yeah. We'll say it. Yeah, no disrespect to any of those like any other Purdue teams, but yeah, if Carson Edwards is watching this, probably not, but like no disrespect.
Love him. But
it's I don't know. That's I love what they bring back. I think Jaden Ivey is going to be awesome. So that's why I have him at 1. But I think if you buy into the ceiling of Michigan, you're allowed to have them at 1. But again, these are the top 2. Do you have any further thoughts? Any further thoughts on Purdue?
I got 2. Jaden Ivey. Watched him during that USA U19 run to the title. Really bought into him there. Really, he can just get to the rim with such ease and fluidity. It's insane. He'll open up spaces for the other guys, and he'll just do it all. I said he was a catalyst. It's so true. And then, like John Rothstein says, death, taxes, and Matt Painter. Those are the three most sure things in life. So there's my Purdue take.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it. All right, we're done with the teams. Do we want to, I don't know if you did a like first team all Big Ten prediction. We can just kind of end with that.
I got one. I can roll through it right now.
All right, what do you got? Hit me with it.
No guards. E.J. Liddell, Travion Williams, Hunter Dickinson, Kofi Cockburn, and Trace Jackson Davis.
Okay, wow. Yeah, all big men. So that's the thing. So yeah, when I was looking at this, like when I think of like an all conference team, I think like two guards,
2 forwards, 2 centers. I'm 1 center.
Yeah. 2 guards are just like three big men. I don't know. So I had Ivey, I had Curbelo, I had Hunter Dickinson, Kofi Cockburn, and it was a toss-up for me between Trace Jackson Davis and E.J. Liddell. And I don't know. It's just so, like, it's so hard. It would be so, like, there's so many good.
I can see Ivey replacing Williams, but I am hard-pressed to find a world where the 4 guys of Liddell, Davis, Dickinson, and Cockburn don't make the first team. I'm hard-pressed to find that world.
Yeah. So if you want to just do away with positions, I think that's the way to go in predicting the first team. It's just like.
I did. I don't care.
Well, I know. Yeah.
It's fine. Rolling with it.
I guess just when so then what is that? I guess second team is then like mostly guards then. Like,
second team. You know, you got to throw in Baker from Rutgers. You got to throw in Curbelo. You know what? I'll flip. I'll go Jaden Ivey makes first team, and I'll put Travion Williams on second team.
Okay.
And that somewhat pains me.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll have a guard in there. Jaden Ivey will be a first team, all Big Ten. Mm-hmm. You did not hear it here first because I'm sure someone else said it.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, solid. Yeah. Oh, I said it again.
Oh, dang it. Okay, we're running up the counter. Real quick, prediction for player of the year, last thing. Mine is Cockburn, because I think his value to that team is insane. Like, they would not be where they are without him. So that's why I have him as my preseason player of the year. Dickinson? Okay, I like it. All right, that's going to wrap things up for the Big Ten preview. Again, this is brought to you by Vendetta Sports Media. Go check out the site, vendettasportsmedia.com. Read. Alex and I referenced some articles that we've written. Go read them. I think they're pretty good. And yeah, for Alex, that's going to do it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Thank you.